Aatmanirbhar Bharat, a mission launched by our Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, took India towards the mission of being self-reliant. And in the aftermath of the pandemic, India Inc. has emerged to be strong and resilient. I am delighted to introduce to you our panel on Aatmanirbhar Bharat, a self-reliant India Inc. This panel will be moderated by Mr. Rajesh Bagga. Mr. Bagga is a lawyer and founder of the Yuhina law firm. He has long leaderships in the industry and has also been a group general counsel for various MNCs and has dealt in a diverse business in India as well as in the overseas market. He has also been chairing committees of industry chambers both internationally and in India on various matters such as the legal, IPR and taxation. Joining him today as our panelists are Mr. Manish Choksi is the Vice Chairman of Asian Paints Limited. Mr. Choksi joined Asian Paints Limited in the year 1992 as an executive and has grown within the ranks by holding various positions across the organization. He has been a catalyst for the company's foray into home improvement and has significantly contributed into achieving the company's growth plans, more particularly in the critical area of implementation of supply chain management and solutions. Mr. Choksi holds directorships in various public companies and is an avid angel investor. We also have with us Mr. Ninad Karpe, a partner at 100x VC, a venture capital firm which invests in early stage startup and aims to invest in 100 startups every year. 100x VC is the first institutional investor in startups and invests through iSafe notes, which it pioneered in India. Mr. Karpe was also the MD and CEO at Aptech Limited for more than 7 years and has also served as the managing director in CA Technologies, a US headquartered leader in software products, as the managing director of India. He has shared his learnings and authored a book on business strategies titled Born to Baba, which received admiring reviews and was listed by Amazon in its prestigious list of memorable books 2018. We also have with us today Mr. Shailesh Haribhakti, the chairman of Bluestar Limited, L&T Financial Holdings Limited and mutual funds. By profession, a chartered and cost accountant, an internal auditor, and a certified financial planner and fraud examiner, he is also served as a board chairman, audit committee chair, and independent director in the country's most prominent organization. He is well known as a thought leader in the industry of Indian economy and public policy. He is an ex-tech. He is also an IR and an ESG evangelist. He is also the author of 2 books, The Digital Professional and Audit Renaissance. Mr. Haribhakti is highly passionate about the above topics and frequently speaks about them under various forums. Over to you now, Mr. Bagga.
Welcome, gentlemen, and we are here to discuss the Aatmanirbhar Bharat and the onus on the private industry to take that forward. As per the dream put out by the government, they want India to be leading in the race for garnering the manufacturing and supply chains of the world, and the opportunity was actually thrown up by the feud between the Western world and China, where they were losing orders and the foreign companies were looking for alternate places of sourcing. So I think it's a great opportunity for India, and to take us to the next level in playing as a major player in the world. I think it should be a nice measure to help the Indian industry to grow up. As you know, Indian industry was thrown into the cauldron of competition by the reforms that took place in late 80s, and we are now in 2020s. So they have had enough time to actually gear up and to measure up to the world standards, and I'm sure they will live up to this new challenge as well. I would now call upon my panelists, who are an eminent set of industrialists, to give their overall views and the opening remarks on the issue. We'll start with Mr. Shailesh Haribhakti. Yes, sir, we could have it now.
It's wonderful to be on this panel, and let me begin by congratulating the team from Legasis for this extraordinary effort put into compliance 10 by 10. And I must say that if we do not underpin everything that relates to Aatmanirbharta on great governance, purposeful governance, complete intolerance to anything that is non-compliant, it is so important to bring that culture into everything that we do. And of course, we need to have the right to win based on what is India's soft power. Atmanirbharta has also to be accompanied by Atmaita. And that is really the important thing. The good news for India is that we have the right to win in many areas. We can and have shown our leadership in vaccine manufacturing. We are the largest manufacturer of vaccines in the whole world. We, of course, could not fulfill our commitment to the COVAX initiative simply because we needed to get our population vaccinated. But there is now a great chance, as our Prime Minister mentioned at UNGA recently, for others to come in and manufacture here in India, which also speaks to the idea of manufacturing in India or Atmanirbharta in manufacturing. We can also become the protein capital of the world. The world has now discovered the holy grail of moving into egg, poultry, fish, meat, everything out of either stem cells or embryo preparation, or indeed embryos going into artificial wombs or surrogates and getting the whole term of whatever needs to be grown in a way that protein abundance can be created. And India could become the capital for this. Blockchain and technology has been our forte. And I think that's something that we will always be great at. But the area where we have shown tremendous leadership and our entire economy has geared up to is energy transition. We have made very significant moves to renewables. Solar and wind today and other renewables today constitute close to 25% of our power mix, which is a fantastic achievement. And very recently, the foundation stone has been laid for a massive solar and wind combined renewable project in the run of Kutch, where there is ample sunlight. And that, I think, is going to create true leadership and Atmanirbharta for India with all the other elements built into it. Our infrastructure thrust also is an immense area there is no place on earth where as much infrastructure investment is going into the ground as India. Take metros, take rail, take bullet trains, take the road infrastructure, the highways, the incremental power investment we are doing. In every field, there is a chance for India to really lead the way, because we have such a big per capita consumption deficit that no amount of investment will be sufficient. And of course, finally, we need to educate at scale. And so we have many, many opportunities, many, many rights to win. And we need to get it right this time by working together. Public, private, NGO, the whole country has to come together. This is an age and era of collaboration, where we can show that because we have that basic instinct to excel and collaborate, we can win.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Ninadji?
Thank you again for inviting me, Legasis, for organizing this on a very important topic. You know, in our day-to-day running of businesses, sometimes we need to keep reminding ourselves that, yes, business will be on, but corporate governance is by far the most important thing. You know, just to add to what Shailesh is saying, broadly, I would say in Aatmanirbhar Bharat, there are, you know, if we, instead of having industry, services, the agriculture typical way, suppose we say that India now has a generational opportunity post the pandemic to make some massive impact on the global stage. We should see this as an opportunity. And why do I say so? If I look at from the soft power and then the hard power, you know, hard power has manufacturing, has agriculture, has all the other stuff. Because of the tremendous geopolitical forces also which are shaping the world, we do have now an opportunity to lead in all of the sectors. Name agriculture, name manufacturing, and that is because everything is coming together in that part. Of course, reforms are required. We do have the talent, we do have the ability, but reforms are required. On the soft power side, briefly, Shailesh alluded to it, but maybe I'll kind of expand a little bit. You know, typically, traditionally, Bollywood has always had high visibility. But what is more important in soft power for India is education. The number of educated people we have, we can provide the industry. I would also broadly put, you know, industries, although they can fall somewhere in between, like banking or even like, you know, IT industry. IT industry from nowhere is $150 billion, around that figure, exports, and 45 billion in India. Massive things happened. That is all because of the talent and the quality of people here. Education, we have the ability to be the education capital of the world across sectors. Look at banking, fintech, you know, by far, there's no doubt in my mind that we will have more fintechs than any other country in the world. This is going to happen not just because of the great talent we have, but also the opportunity we have and the depth and the breadth of the kind of issues we face. No other country has it. So that by itself manifests into an opportunity. And of course, underlying all this is the fact that, including in the soft power, I would also put my favorite topic of startups. You know, startups, you know, by this year, we've already had 28 unicorns so far. So that is also going to add. So broadly speaking, on the hard side, we have a generational opportunity to make a big impact on the global market, a global map. On the soft side, we have a natural ability. We just need to push it harder.
Thank you, Ji. Manish Ji.
Thank you to Legasis for organizing the Compliance 1010. I think it's an opportunity to discuss the impact of governance and compliance on what I think the Indian government is almost terming as new sunrise, an Aatmanirbhar Bharat or a self-reliant India, which I think is going to propel us into a different paradigm. And as Ninad and Shailesh was saying earlier, I think we need to look at and build on what we have done in the past out there. And the sectors that I would say pretty much are, what shall I say, anchors for this self-reliance that we want to build on will be the technology sector, which clearly has taken us from sort of where we were to where we are today, a services powerhouse in the world. But I think that leadership needs to translate itself into, you know, developing and deploying new technology products to actually, you know, pretty much better the way we work, the way we live, and almost in some sense the way we want to transform ourselves. So I would say that regardless of the sector that we pick and we discuss today, the impact that the use of technology can have on that, in terms of the speed at which we can reform that sector, the speed at which we can sort of bring scale efficiency to that sector. That needs to be truly be our sort of contribution to the rest of the world. Examples of that, look at our banking and finance system that Ninad was talking about. The way we have gone and adopted electronic payments and electronic commerce has been, it's a technology revolution driven at scale in some sense of the word. And most important than not, it has driven costs down in a country which is sort of, I would not say devoid of resources, but has always lesser resources than what we should have. Being able to use technology to drive down costs and improve efficiency, that is the direction in which we need to think that India can not only contribute to its growth, but it can contribute to the growth of all emerging markets and thus, put the world on a different level playing field. I think the next area of impact can be sort of the demographic dividend that we've got, the younger population we've got. And our job and sort of almost our duty would be to make sure that they are educated, and not only educated from a literate point of view, but educated from an ability to work in industry and ability to execute point of view. And that's where I think technology and education coming together and being able to deliver all of this at scale will become a massive push. And I think the government can play a huge role in almost sort of, getting out of education and, maybe removing shackles of, guidelines that they have got across it and make it sort of free for everyone at some point of time, such that, we are able to produce, institutions of scale that can work in India and abroad. Obviously, none of this would be possible if we don't develop a core manufacturing sector, whether it's manufacturing for our own consumer requirements, whether it is for exports to the world, or whether it is for engineering and defense, as the case may be. And we need to be wary of being net importers in this area of manufactured goods. And we need to develop and utilize the technologies that we are so good at to make sure that our industries can compete with the best in the world. We have some experience in that. And what I'm saying is that we shouldn't only look at our sort of, narrow industry in some sense of the word, but competition in the future is going to be competition of ecosystems. It is the entire system that you would build from your vendors and their vendors all the way to your customers who are going to be serviced by your partners. That entire ecosystem will sort of compete with another one. And it's the job of large industry to be able to make sure that in this manufacturing process, they make sure that these capabilities are transferred to smaller and mid enterprises who can become the backbone of an effective supply chain in some sense of words. So I think we need to really look at the government's push on MSME as large industry to really drive efficiency and sort of improved way of working there, and also look at startups as a means to power some of the new innovation that we've got in manufacturing in some sense of the word. And I think this is sort of going to be the thrust of what I think is going to have sort of the new sunrise for India.
Thank you. I think the big change that's happening is the confidence that the government is willing to repose on the private sector. Let me give you a few examples. They have jacked up the FDI limit from 49% to 74% in defense. Now, defense, as we knew, was a very, very controversial and very tightly controlled sector in India. But I think the nudge from China has led the government to a situation where they have clearly woken up in the defense sector, and that has the potential to employ a lot of people. Some of the good measures, since we are on defenses, are that they have said that there is a reserved list of weapons which will only be manufactured in India. Whether you do it on your own or you have FDI, please manufacture only here. So that would directly go to increasing employment. The other thing which is happening is they want to set up a health system across the country in all the blocks and all the villages. They want to set up labs across the country in all the blocks. Now, all this will require, will actually give employment opportunities to health professionals and also improve the health and social sector in the rural areas. Take the case of privatization. That also is really a signal of confidence that the government has in the private sector to let go of certain areas which they had reserved to themselves. Take the case of railways. They're willing to let out routes and also rail operations to the private sector. They will privatize those routes, and like you have in the Europe or all over EU, you have railway lines which are run by private sector, and they're running quite efficiently. But really, I think what is of concern here is the confidence that is being reposed would be counterbalanced with terms and conditions and regulations which will come in so that the consumer is not taken for a ride, the quality is not poor. And I think that is what the industry should carefully look at and ensure that their systems and processes meet those high standards that the government expects them. Now, even in privatization, we have seen in the past that any industry that was privatized, there were a few clauses in the divestment agreements which the industry was supposed to carry on till the government decided to let go of that sector. So I think the industry will have to be clearly gearing up to meet those challenges. Also, I think in the coal mining sector and in the power distribution sector, the government is willing to take decisions which it was shying away from in the past. And I think these will create a lot of employment opportunities and also throw out sectors to the private companies, and they could get the technology from outside. But as the Aatmanirbhar Bharat scheme suggests, the manufacturing and the operations will have to be locally handled, and not that you manufacture elsewhere and then import it. I think these are all things that augur well for India, and I'm sure the country and the industry would rise to take these challenges. I would now like to request the speakers to pick a few sectors. They have already named a few sectors like education, technology, and innovation by startups. Now, in the same order, could we go through, pick up your favorite sectors, Mr. Haribhakti, and let's hear what your dream would be for the industry and India.
So my dream is of a clean hydrogen powered economy and a fully digitalized economy. Every aspect of India must have the lowest unit cost of power. And that can only come from hydrogen, and clean hydrogen at that. We are going to invite a very major global conference next week itself, where we will be discussing what has happened since this thrust was announced in our last budget, in terms of what has private industry done, who has put up their hands, how do we get the whole act together, what will it take in our ecosystem to get to clean hydrogen. Energy transition, which will include in our country solar, wind, and clean hydrogen, has to be our biggest thrust, because that's the basic motive power. And the other is digitalization. We know that there has been complete disruption of many supply chains. Totally a new world is emerging. People don't know what to do when China's manufacturing can very suddenly slump. They've cut off power. They're saying we're not going to supply power. They're talking about industry closing down for 2 days in a week because they simply want to make sure that the fossil fuel power on which China's economy is based is completely made to take a different turn. And with that, there is a huge challenge of disrupted supply chains. Now, who will take up that slack and how? And so there is the need to use and deploy all the technologies that we have learned in the digital disruption era and deploy them at scale in India so that the world can find a true, good, reliable, honest alternative to the great footprint that China had developed in the past. So what will we have to do this? We will have to use the 6 Ds of digitalization, which I will quickly enunciate and not discuss in full for the time being. The first one is obviously delocalize. We need to make sure that not only do the existing centers of industrial activity get activated, but we need to push this out to tier 2, tier 3 locations, new established places, use the coastal availability, and make sure that manufacturing industry gets established across this whole length and breadth of the country. So delocalize. 2, we need to make sure that we disrupt. So we need to bring in all the technologies. We need to bring in 3D printing. We need to bring in manufacturing 4.0, robotics, all of the IoT and all the other technologies that the world has experimented with and now can deploy at scale. So very disruptive technology deployment. 3, we need to bring down the costs and pull out the sloth that we've tolerated, which can happen by some of the things that Mr. Bagga mentioned earlier, which is privatization, trust, put productivity on top of everybody's agenda, make sure that a new cost curve is achieved by all Indian industry. 4thly, we have the best infrastructure in terms of payments. Digital payments in India are at number 1 in the world. We have beaten China in terms of the digital payments that we are effecting through our entire new infrastructure that we have set up. The infrastructure that we have today is one of the finest, highest quality infrastructure in the world. And this has to be given full rein to. But most important, perhaps, is that we need to democratize the availability of this whole output, not only for our own people, but in a way that we are cost competitive in the whole world. And therefore, we'll have to slash logistics costs, slash power costs, slash all the costs that have made India a high-cost manufacturing location. Switch to these, and we can adopt a fresh new curve and democratize the entire process that we have chosen to go into. I would say that this can become India's next 3 years. Look at our economy. We have the best performing capital market. We have a stable currency. We have first quarter of this fiscal, we have a surplus on current account. Because although we had to spend more on oil, we did much better in terms of invisibles, service exports, and on remittances. And so we turned out a surplus. And beyond all of that, we have the highest growth at 20% in the first quarter again. It was a stellar performance that India put in. And if we can replicate some of the lessons and some of the thrusts, we've learned how to convert the pandemic into an endemic. And we have all begun to learn in new ways to approach work from home, a combination of working from home and at the location. We have learned how to use cloud in a big way. It's a huge change of mindset that we have gone through. In 2 years, what we have learned and adopted has been dramatic. Now, when we put all of this together, this is the time that we can really take off. But we must have the highest quality of purposeful governance. We must continue to be stewards of the environment, and we must make sure that social responsibility is uppermost in our minds. And so the ESG philosophy will have to be deeply ingrained into our DNA if we have to keep succeeding.
Thank you, sir. I would just like to add one point for your consideration. That is, India also must keep in mind that it should not be creating a society of haves alone. I think some of those results have to percolate down to the poorest of the poor, which was highlighted during the pandemic, during those, migration and things like that. I think that is one aspect which must happen, because unlike China, which failed to do that, they created a set of millionaires and nothing else. But some of these results must percolate down. And I think, as Ninad sir had mentioned, that education and democratization of the technologies, bringing the benefits down to the poor people and in the rural areas, I think that will be really, really heartening if that can happen.
Absolutely. I fully endorse and agree to that.
Thank you, sir. Ninadji.
Aji. So I would make a limited point of saying overarching, if India can aim to be the innovation capital of the world, everything will fall in place and there'll be then those building blocks. Typically for last 70, 75 years, India has adopted a different model for research and development. Government has by and large pumped most of its money in public institutions and colleges. This is exactly opposite of the model followed in Silicon Valley. I'm not saying that's exactly the model we should adopt, but it's exactly the opposite, where private sector is co-opted into the entire process of innovation, where colleges and private sector come together and are in the forefront of innovation. And that's why you mentioned about defense. Look at small countries in terms of size, not in terms of GDP, in terms of population. Israel or Sweden, they're exporters of large amount of defense. Why has it happened? Because of innovation. So if we aim to be the innovation capital of the world as part of Aatmanirbhar Bharat, everything will follow. MSMEs today can become global leaders. They have technology, they have financial fintech models, they have deliveries to help them. You talk about agriculture, obviously, with a lot of agri-tech happening and the reforms happening, it can become the food basket of the world. Defense, we have, of course, a long way to go, but if we just focus on innovation. And with innovation, if we drive innovation differently and keep that as at the forefront, everything will work differently. Of course, my dream is we have friction-free economy where, you can really have high productivity. That will include everything from low cost of manufacture, reforms, all the bureaucratic hassles, whether it's, all the processes, and truly even a small scale industry. I'm just naming a place, Jalgaon or from Tripura or from wherever, should be able to compete in the world market. It is possible today. Technology is enabling that. When I say again innovation, that should percolate down to education. We become the education capital of the world. Today, we are proud that the largest valued edtech company in the world is in India, in the world, not just Indian. It's just amazing. In a matter of 4-5 years, we talk about banking services. All of this put together, if innovation becomes at the forefront, we will forge ahead. We will, truly get what we deserve.
Thank you, sir. Totally agree. Manish bhai.
Building on to what Mr. Haribhakti and Ninad just said, I think there are some platform sort of development blocks that we are talking of, innovation as a platform. Mr. Haribhakti talked about digital and all of the things that are coming out of the pandemic, health and clean energy, environment as a platform. If we were to look at the application areas for all of this, and this is the place where something that Ninad talked about is where I think he talked about only university and private sector. I would say there's a a three-party multi-party partnership that we need to have. Government needs to make sure that regulation exists, but obviously it should not be driven in the form where it is almost to the point of policing. So regulation should be there for the improvement and acceleration of that particular sector. So I'm saying if we have a three-way partnership in this innovation model, then I think in many of the areas that we talked about, whether it is digital and building on sort of the financial payment system and access platform. If you look at disintermediation and, Ninad just gave one example of disintermediation in education, producing at one level a company which is very, very large, very, very successful. But more importantly, just look at the impact that they are able to make even via the pandemic. In the pandemic, we were shut down. It was through the use of digital technology that we kept, in some sense, our sanity in the world of education in some sense. So I'd say that whenever you look at application areas, I think there is a need for India to transform its mindset on application. I think we have all the building blocks, but when it comes to making sure that it is applied in each of the areas, there is maybe some amount of, new ways of regulation that we need to look at. And maybe there is new ways of innovation that private industry needs to look at, where they not only have the role of creating large enterprises, but also making sure that there is a social, or let's say there is a larger than life impact that they are trying to create through the entire ecosystem that they operate with. I think if people start to step out of their comfort roles, I think this transformation can be quite significant and quite rapid in some sense of the word, because we would now be cooperating and collaborating with each other rather than saying that these are three circles that don't sort of come together in some sense. So I would say we need to bring down the barriers that are preventing collaboration across this enterprise. I think the government's move on divestment is one such area, because if the government is out of business, so to speak, it kind of clears the level playing field in some sense of word. I think the challenge will always, I think, remain in two areas. One is our ability to make sure that that sort of the technology that got us here is not going to get us ahead, is the area of, I would say, making sure that environment, social and governance, something that Mr. Haribhakti talked about, is embedded in whatever we are doing. And it is not sort of, it's an integral part of what we deliver. I think that is very critical in the way we are going to look at things going forward. And I would say, last but not the least, we need to make sure that we look at the competing sort of with the world rather than competing with ourselves in some sense of word, and making sure that we are one amongst the leaders in the world in everything that we are doing. That should be the benchmark of what we choose. So creating the right benchmarks, creating the right partnership models and deployment models we've got, and obviously utilizing some of the things that we've already built upon, that should probably get us ahead in the way I look at it.
Thank you. I think more and more you would have seen the tenders and the contracts being offered by the government. More and more of those actually operate on the basis of benchmarks and benchmark performances and benchmark results. And I think that's a good way to go. But what I feel is, I think for this to be really successful, the choosing of the industries to divest to, and also the benchmarks that are created for performance will be really key, because I think if we have any bad eggs coming to the fore in the beginning, then I think the government could lose confidence in the industry, and it will not augur well for the future of this scheme. Also, we have had a few large accidents in the past, and people have been caught with a whole lot of governance and ethical issues. That somehow a system needs to be put in place where people are actually, instead of being policed, they are guided all along in areas which are sensitive, where they do not go off the track and don't create a bad precedent for even the genuine people to follow. I think two other sectors, if we could quickly touch upon, are really the merger and coagulation of banks. How is it going to impact and whether it will affect the employment? Because that is one of the serious concerns of the unions. Number two, I think in the agri sector, I'm not talking about the farmers sitting on the roads at all. I'm talking about contract farming and essential commodities being relaxed. Now, these were long-standing demands of the industry, where India, being surplus in agri production, really wastes nearly 60% of its produce due to bad handling and bad supply chain to the markets. So I think those two sectors, if we can quickly touch upon, that will really help us go along. Who would like to take the banking sector, please?
Okay, I can take a shot at banking and
I suspect that, sir.
You know, the merger of PSU banks and the finance minister's announcement that what India needs is 5 PSU powerful banks, which are technology driven, which are efficient, which will serve the public of India and will be the bridge between today and tomorrow. After all, what is banking? Banking started out as the bridge between what we are today and what we want to be tomorrow. And that was being financed by the banking environment. Today, we had driven our banking into various diversions. And the result was that we had an NPA level and capital adequacy level, which was becoming dangerous to the real stability of the financial system. And so massive action was required. Fortunately for us, we have had the IBC, although there was grave opposition and many people stood up and there were delays and all of that, we have had outcomes which are staggering. I think the fact that yesterday Mr. Piramal completed the acquisition of the erstwhile DHFL and saved a very major financial disaster from happening is very remarkable. And the IBC was what was utilized. The other noteworthy thing is that today, again, Air India has gone to Tata Sons. And I think that's exactly what you were saying, Mr. Bagga, a little while ago. The fact that we are having these large, successful, well-funded industrialists coming in and taking large risks in the financial system, in the system that is privatizing, I think that augurs very well for the future. To summarize, basically we need better governed banks who are totally compliant and where the remit of Reserve Bank of India runs large and runs equal across every bank, every NBFC. That is really what we need to get to. And the great news for us is that we are inching towards that outcome, which can only augur very well for financing the future, which is full of growth, full of democratization, making sure that everything it's inclusive. The way we have done MFI at scale, this is an example to the whole world. The way that we have been able to deliver agricultural finance, for example, is just amazing. Far larger than the growth of agricultural sector is the growth of financing to the agriculture sector. And that has become a way for us to actually make sure that in rural India, where 55-60% of our population lives, we have a chance that they will get to a better future.
So let me now put it to you, gentlemen, unless you want to take up another sector, what more would you like to see in India apart from these very positive announcements by the government, what more? What's holding us back, if not for these?
The one thing that is holding us back is our legal system's delays.
Yeah, that was number one on my list, yes.
I'm so happy that now we will finally see a whole lot of appointments being done to just fill up vacancies in all the high courts, and in Supreme Court, we've already done it, and in all the tribunals and all across the board. That is the fundamental thing that needs to go forward.
I think since I'm the only legal person, I'll just add to it that I think the system of injunctions and the delays in the Indian legal system must go as well. I think that's a big, big roadblock to any major step happening. You start making a factory, some fellow says that 5 hectares of land right in the middle of the site is mine, and he tries to take an injunction. That's unheard of anywhere else. Because I think that is number one. And two, I think the delays in Indian trials are being misused left, right, and center by the high and mighty. That delay part must go. And I think some utterances by the Chief Justice in that line have...
Absolutely. We must compliment the Chief Justice. He has taken very bold steps. It's such a refreshing thing to see him operate with an open, free hand.
So
if I may go to Mr. Ninath, anything that comes to your mind, sir, which India must take on to open up and really garner the fruits of Aatmanirbhar Bharat?
I would add to, after the legal system, I would add downstreaming of reforms. Very critical. I think it's not easy, but that's what governance is all about. The intentions are all good, but unless it is downstream and the MSME person feels the impact of it, it is not easy. So downstreaming has various aspects, and it has to keep going down till and it's monitored. So I would say that is the big aspect. I would like to go back to one topic you mentioned about meltdowns and governance. And since governance is the thing, I just want to mention one point. The way to handle it is, since the topic is compliance and governance, is some of these things have to be put in the school education itself. Ethics as a topic. It has to be taught at that level, and then it goes up. Unless you put these topics at that level, and that will make a massive generational change. So,
Ninath, we used to have moral science classes in school.
Yes.
That's no longer there.
So actually, I don't know, in my school curriculum, we had the Mahatma Gandhi's autobiography as a textbook. And I still remember that book, but I don't think why, I don't know why it vanished from the curriculum. It's such a fantastic book, at least teaches you how to say, stick to truth and kindness. Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
So that's a downstreaming of reforms and ethics as a subject in education.
Yeah, fabulous.
I think from a framework perspective, I think Mr. Haribhakti and Ninath have covered it, but I think we need to also make sure that India sort of stands out on the world stage. I personally think that in many areas we are leaders, but we somehow tend to not take up the challenge of being a leader at world stage. So if we wanted to talk about climate change, then I think the kind of leadership we have shown at the geopolitical level must translate into now looking at some of larger environmental areas, larger globalization areas. And, this is the place where we have the ability to demonstrate leadership that would open, I think, new vistas of innovation and obviously new vistas of leadership. And we would truly be looked upon as a nation which has transformed itself from the land of the many to the land of, plenty in some sense of the word.
Fabulous. Abundance.
One point I had, I hope you agree, And that was really in the last 15 years, really. The bureaucracy has virtually exited the risk-taking ability in India, owing to some of the prosecutions, even post-retirement of bureaucrats who had taken decisions. I think somewhere, somehow, the government must instill confidence in the bureaucracy that if you take genuine business or policy decisions, which are not driven by corruption or by ill will, we will protect you.
Correct.
And what that is likely to do is that it's likely to bring speed, which I think some of us mentioned, and also the decentralization of decision making. Today, the easiest thing is like the doctor, he keeps referring it to the specialist. And today in India, we have, I think, a very few specialists on top who are taking decisions. I think somewhere the bureaucracy needs to be empowered to take decisions and to implement them properly, and not to hide behind that I was told so and I had the approval and things like that. I hope you agree to that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Post-mortemization of decisions.
Everybody is smarter with the hindsight. Yeah.
I hope that word is not in the English dictionary. I don't know, but post-mortemization has to stop. I think it's impacting the economy. It's impacting everything.
For something to visit you, which is ancient history, you don't have any record, you can't defend yourself. It's just not fair.
Yeah, some of them were put in behind bars after 5-6 years of their retirement, which was very, very sad, I thought. So I think that is one area.
But thank you, Mr. Bagga. This has been such a fascinating set of ideas that we have been able to discuss. And I think we have covered the ground so beautifully, thanks to all the preparation that was done and all the support we got. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Any closing remarks, sir?
Let's get on with it. Let's make sure that India exercises its right to win.
Absolutely.
Well, I would only say that the problems are known and solutions are possible. Let's get working on it. And I'm sure, with innovation, with all the technology which we have and the resources we have, we will truly be a better place to live in. And India will find a better place on the table in the global map.
Absolutely. We will.
No procrastination, just execution.
Absolutely.
Brilliant.
I think what gives me confidence is that in the last 10 years or so, the people who have won real big have been people who have been taking steps to be ethical, to be strong on governance, and have shown the mettle to take business risks big, and also to imbibe world technologies and to imbibe innovations. People have been, let's say, investing in startups who have, just about an idea at hand and nothing else. So, which is very good sign. And I think the success stories are what make you very, very optimistic about the future of India. And I think, as all of us wish, India must take its stand on the leadership podium in the world. And I'm sure we will all see it happening in the near future. Thank you, gentlemen. You've been an excellent panel and so nice of you for the inputs. Till we meet again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us. Thank you.
We would like to thank our panelists for their time and sharing such immense knowledge with us. You may now join our panelists for a live Q&A session in the breakout room.